This is Jesse Hensley.
This is Josh Turner.
And this is Chris Bow.
Welcome to Turn Down for What?
Welcome back to Turn Down for What? We have a unique episode today. We are, not in studio, in the middle of traveling to a event, and so did not have studio time this week. But we have the wonderful privilege of having a discussion today with Joe. Was at the Cybertruck delivery event last week, and we obviously have a bunch of news to talk around the actual Cybertruck announcement. Last week, we spent all of our time actually discussing all the hypotheticals of what we thought would be coming out of this release, and here we are now at the juncture where all of the initial data has been released, and we have somebody that was actually at the announcement event. So thank you for being with us, Joe.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So just some basics that we can cover to get going. Obviously, Chris, me and you speculated last week for a bit of time in regards to all the what ifs. And I mean, if I remember correctly, my guess at that time was that we would see $80,000. We said 69, 420 was the price range. But then we went and we said, hey, we're probably looking at 3 to 4 second, depending on the motors, 0 to 60. And we had mentioned a range of what I think I said was 400, being the case for that Cybertruck release. So now we're at the point where all of the initial data has been released. Looks like we have 3 different models of the Cybertruck that have been announced. And it looks like we will have the rear wheel single motor for $60,990. Looks like 6.50 to 60, 250 mile range. So much lower, obviously, just for that single motor unit. I think that's in the realm of the Fords, that's the Pro equivalent as far as the base, lowest end model. But that one's not coming out till 2025. And then the 2 models that they're releasing, I think, effective immediately, is going to be the one, which is the all-wheel drive, which I'm envisioning is going to be the dual motor. That one features the longest range at 340 miles with a 4.1 second 0 to 60. Looks like top speed of 112 on that model, which is very comparable to what we experience in our trucks. I only know this because I've tested it on a closed track at some given point in time. And 600 horsepower, they're saying 7,435 pound-feet of torque, which is insane. 11,000 pound towing capacity, which, in my opinion, all the way down the line at a price of $79,990 is a spitting image pretty much of what you see with the F-150 Lightning extended range. It's very, very, very similar statistically, except for 15 more miles of range. And they're saying 7,400 pound-feet of torque. I mean, our trucks have 775 is what they advertise it. I don't know the mathematics behind that advertising, but, there we go. And then lastly, I
think they're measuring it differently. They're just using a different measure, like at the wheels or some other kind of factor, I think, that's out there. But it's just
I know that the GMC Hummer did that too, and they were like, when they dropped it, they were like, the launch model has 11,000 pound-feet of torque, and I was like, holy cow, that's. But I know weight plays a factor, but it's performance-wise all that really matters. Very similar to the Lightning truck in that regard, but then obviously the Cyber Beast, which is what they were showcasing off on stage, is your Lightning Platinum, the 99,990, right at the 100,000 mark. Obviously, like the Platinum, we're seeing a diminished range down to 320, so a 20-mile range loss for the extra tri-motor. So that's a tri-motor setup. 320 is the advertised range, 2.6 0 to 60, which is insane for a massive truck. 845 horsepower, 130 top speed. So it's a little bit faster. same towing capacity and all of that. So the three models that were released. Now, the one caveat I'll say before we kind of start diving into that dialogue is they are advertising on their website an add-on plug-in battery, that will actually provide extended range, but it's like a additional battery pack, which I believe I have to pull it up. I believe it gave you up to 440 range, if I remember correctly. So it gives you a little bit more range.
470.
470. So yeah, I mean it gives you the more range, closer to what we originally predicted, but obviously you're going to lose 30% of your trunk or something like that. So that is all of what was announced. What do you think, Chris?
Oh man, for me, my reservation was for the single motor, the 250. I mean, I've got the standard range Lariat, Lightning, and it's 230. For what I drive around the Bay Area, that's fine. I'm doing it in town driving, commute traffic driving. I've had it be as high as close to 300 miles just because of the nature of how I'm driving it. So to me, that's plenty. So I'm still have my reservation, but that's the kind of spec I was waiting on. And then, Joe and I go back over a year now. He's the president there of the Tesla Owners Club in San Joaquin Valley. And one of the very first trips I ever did in my Lightning was down to his Cars and Coffee down there at Dutch Brothers, was it?
Yeah, Visalia,
yeah. And got to meet
Fresno, that whole area.
Yeah, that was one of my first kind of times to use DC fast charging and to kind of take a trip in it. And I made it down there with no problems, and then just hit up an EA station where I did have problems, but eventually made it back home again and got to meet Joe and Ben, the EV guy down there. And I was the only Lightning that originally showed up, and then a little bit later, a second Lightning came.
Yeah.
Even back then, Cybertruck was the talk, right? I mean, this whole time, that's where the excitement.
Well, I mean, it's been the talk for 6 years now, or however long it's been. So
4 years.
Yeah.
So I think I think it was what I expected. I had very realistic expectations, having seen the Lightning launch at 40,000, having it come out and get the price increases that it had, seeing COVID and the supply chain. I felt like I had very realistic expectations. Now, I think what I'm really kind of jonesed about was just that they let you guys in the factory, Joe. And I mean, you've sung songs about Cybertruck. So what was that like for you to walk into the actual factory and to be amongst that energy? And what were you expecting, and what did you feel walking into that?
Well, let's go back. Tell us everything from the start, and then we'll ask questions from there.
Yeah, how'd you get the invite? Tell us, man.
So I'm very fortunate to be a part of a podcast, a weekly podcast, and I got the invite from Jeff Lutz, who's one of our co-hosts on the podcast. So he extended his invite to me. His wife couldn't make it, and so he sent that to me, and I was like, yes.
So great Christmas present.
Yeah, no doubt. But so the whole event was it was pretty electric, right? Because I mean, it's everybody, like you said, it's been 4 years. Everybody was waiting, and it was like the excitement. This was the event to be at. That being said, of course, as we know, it kind of fell short of like Cyber Rodeo and even the initial unveil, but still, it was pretty exciting. The amount of access that they let you have, like when you walk in, they have the complete breakdown of the vehicle right there, like in all of its facets. You got like everything pulled off of it down to the chassis. You're seeing everything just like blowed up, and then you got the battery pack with the seats on top. You know what I mean? Because it's just straight from the bottom, structural, yeah. And then you got both castings like right outside of the truck, so you can see the front and the rear casting, like just right there. Everything was just right there, and all along the production line, because they're making. I mean, there was like a line of trucks, like easily 50 trucks that were like in various forms of stages of
assembly.
production. Yeah. So, but the really cool thing was like at each area, they had a person who you could ask questions, somebody who would talk to you and expertise of that area, down to the tires. There was a guy standing right next to the tires. You know what I mean? And just talking about like the tires and the 35s and everything else. So I mean, it was like it was crazy. Like I've done tours with Tesla before at Fremont, and I've also been to Texas before. I haven't been to Nevada yet, but this was like it was like, yeah, have your cameras out, film whatever you want. I mean, we were all under NDA until like the next day, so nobody was able to post anything, but it was like still, it was like film whatever you want as close as you want and sit on things, like touch things. That was pretty incredible. I've never seen Tesla do anything like that before with any of their launches. You'd have to go to Peterson for any for anything to get that close of access. So that was pretty incredible. I like everybody else, I think the the prices I really wasn't surprised about. I knew for a fact, and I was telling everybody this. I was like, dude, this is not going to be the price of a Hummer EV. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't make any sense. So I wasn't really thinking it was going to be over 100. I figured like at the high end, it might be like 80, 90. He came in at 99, but even a dual motor, I was thinking 60, 70. So I was like right in there after the tax credit is like 72. So I wasn't really too worried about that. And, you know, I mean, just looking at when you look at the trucks that are all like 100 grand or more, you know what I mean? Like even from the Rivian to, you know, not even EV, you know what I mean? Just look at like just regular trucks, like what you get for that is not what you get with the Tesla. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the payload might be this similar. You know what I mean? I think 25 is like kind of industry leading for like most trucks. And then the 11,000 is pretty much the max that most trucks get to. Some of them are the average is like about it seems like 10,000 or something. But I mean they looked at everybody's playbook. It was just like check, check, check. You know, is what it seemed like to me. And then now you add on the speed, you add on the 48 volts, you add on like the safety features that a Tesla has, and the fact that it's like bullet tough and all that. It's like, you know what I mean? You just like you start to get into like really crazy realizations that like initially at the unveil, as soon as it ended, I was like, wait, they didn't mention prices. So I got right on my phone right away. I was like,
Same. Yeah.
I was like, they didn't do that because it's probably right now. And I was telling everybody around me, I was like, oh, it's right. It's on the page. Everybody started looking at their phones and everything. And so like initially I was just kind of like let down. But of course, like as we know, we've been following this for 4 years. The majority of people have not. This was like either going to be their first time hearing about it, and 95% of the country still hasn't. You know what I mean? I talk to people every day. It's like, what's a Cybertruck? So there's a whole group of people that are just going to see this for the first time, and they're going to do the comparisons that I just mentioned, and they're going to realize like, well, hell, this is as far as trucks go, this is insane that they're able to
Yeah.
do all of this and for that price point. And even at the all-wheel drive 79 before the tax credit of 72, you're still like that right there compared to the Rivian at 340 miles of range. It's like that beats on pretty much everything. And I mean, what they're doing is pretty much insane, but I don't really, I mean, like Chris says, I've known him for a while. Like, I don't look at it as like competition for electric trucks. Like, I know people love to compare Rivians and Fords and do all of that, but I look at it as the ICE person. You know what I mean? Like Chris already has an EV truck. You know what I mean? Josh, you have a Lightning 2. You
Yes.
have
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. So we already know what the benefits are. We're not surprised by it. You know what I mean? Whether we buy a Cybertruck or not is it might not be for us. But who it is for and who is actually going to be paying attention is that person who has no idea and then starts to research, or for the person who doesn't even never owned a truck in their life and look at this and like, well, I'll buy that. You know, You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think like, I think that for me is where it boils down to. I've never been one of these type of people because like I'm not like a super Tesla fanboy. I'm the president of the Tesla Owners Club, but I've always been about the mission. And the mission is, you know, what I mean, sustainability for everybody. And that goes along with every EV. All EVs like are included in that. And Tesla can't do it alone, no matter as much as some of the super Uber fanboys will like you to believe, like, oh, Tesla has to be the end all be all. It's not realistic. Yeah, I mean, if there was only one car for everybody, you wouldn't sell that many. So I already know, and I already have that belief in me that it's about the mission and it's all about EVs, and that's why at our events we have like all the vehicles come through because people need to see that there's a variety of choices. You
Yep.
can, you know what I mean, as long as you're doing your educated research and it works for your use case. I mean, hell, I mean, I know Chris got that truck because at the time he needed the truck and the Cybertruck got delayed.
Yep.
And so here we
It's
are,
true.
you know what I mean?
My business partner was an early reservation holder for the Cybertruck, and he would have gotten the Cybertruck, but the Lightning came out first.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think if you are one of the original Cybertruckies that were followed it from the very beginning, I saw
Yeah.
a lot of hate and bad things to say because expectation placed pre-COVID, early development when
Yeah.
Elon just laid it all out. He said, "I'm going to drop a 500-mile range with $50,000 price tag and all this," but realistically, you couldn't go into this event. And I mean, we weren't that far off with our guesstimates last week, but
Yeah.
you can't go into this and say he's going to smoke by double he's going to be half the price
Yeah.
and twice the offering. It's not
Yeah.
sustainable, especially with price increases and everything else that's happened. And like you're saying, the average truck driver coming onto the market, this is going to be it's very competitive. Like I said, if you
Yeah.
look at currently the EV trucks on the market and you're shopping one out, and you go look at a Lightning Lariat, a Rivian R1T, and what is now going to be the Cybertruck dual motor. The Rivian R1T is like I bet this on Twitter last week. It's like a knockoff F-150. It's like a knockoff Ranger is what it is.
Yeah.
It's small. I've been in one. It has its use case. It's a very cool truck. It's an off-roading truck, but it's not a full-size
Right.
F-150 Cybertruck type truck. And I'm 6'6" and a large dude. I fit so much better in a Lightning than I do an
Yeah.
R1T, and that's the reason I won't go R1T. I love the Rivian. I love what they've done, but it's its own thing for the people who want a more mid-size style truck.
Yeah.
But then if you compare a full-size Lightning to a full-size Cybertruck, one, they look totally different. You can go what looks like a traditional truck, the safe route, all that, and go forward. But with the Cybertruck, you get something that looks really cool, super unique. Nothing's ever been done like it. You get to go to Tesla, which is an established electric vehicle juggernaut. More range by not much, but 20 miles does make a difference. If you get that extended battery pack, you could really see 130 miles, even more than that. And you're getting a system of stuff that's really reputable with the charging network and otherwise. And people then can make an educated decision, but it's not like Tesla came out and dropped a big goose egg. It's just obviously Elon laid out all these visions of what he wanted to accomplish 4 years ago, and you flash forward, it's very close, with its own oddities of things that you as an individual have to like and appreciate, which a lot of people will. But that's something that everybody's taste is different, and that's something that I mean, I still think my business partner with the early reservation Cybertruck will have his Q1, and it fits what he's hoping to see. I mean, that's a really cool, unique thing. My truck is not bulletproof; his will be. So that's just one of those things. I mean, it has its pros and its cons, and I think that's something that delivered what would be a realistic expectation, and they're not outside of the realm. They're even slightly above the realm of what all the other competition's doing, while still providing a decent sized battery pack that's not anything mega, faster charging capabilities compared to the F-150 and some of those other things, apples to apples, that really help it, stand out for what it is.
And I think that's the beauty of what they did, was they, what I mean? Like, it's just comparable. Yeah, like you say, it wouldn't have been sustainable to drop the hammer and do like all this crazy things. But Tesla has always maintained that even with this truck, they're not trying to freaking be the number one selling truck. They just need to enter the market, just like they do with everything else. What I mean? They don't need to sell 1 million of these. I don't even think that's the plan. You know what I mean? Like I know they're lowballing at 250 or whatever per year, but still, that what I mean, the goal isn't to have it do Model Y and Model 3 numbers, right? But that being said, Tesla's always held to a different standard. So as soon as they announce whatever they announce, even though all these other companies announce crazy specs on different things with like moss interiors and suicide doors all around the vehicle and stuff like that, and then when it comes out, it doesn't have any of that. Like, people don't comment.
Are you talking on the Rev Ram right now? Is that the?
Oh yeah, right.
Well, yeah. The Rev Ram, the doors and the sliding seat. Yeah,
yeah.
And then it comes
a production,
like a traditional truck.
Nothing like what the
you can smack talk Ram. It's okay. We'll take that here.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, Tesla just tells at a different standard. Always, like, Elon and the company just, like, what I mean, that people just expect what they expect of them, and it's just always been that way. But I think they set goals and they tried to do what they wanted to do, but even if they had released it around that time, I don't even think those prices were, I mean, they were crazy when they announced them. So it wasn't even like, I mean, everybody was losing their freaking mind over the prices at the time. That's how unrealistic those prices were, even during that time. Because the R1T was out and it was like 70 grand. I mean, it was like, what? $39.99. Like, yeah, it wasn't realistic.
Ford did the exact same thing though with the $39.99, and I instantly, on both cases, I made that reservation, $39.99, right? And then I went through that whole like stages of grief when I go and my time came to order the Lightning, and I go to the website, I click my link, Pro sold out, XLT sold out. You're going to pay $69,000 or you're not going to get one. And I'm like, oh, and I'm having a conversation with the wife, and then I'm like, how much am I going to save on gas, and how can I make the math work? And then, and then I got really lucky because the interest rates at the time were 2%. And, my
those are good times.
Great times, man. Right. And my Honda Odyssey minivan that, man, I had an F-150 before, and now I'm 8 years into a Honda Odyssey minivan doing dad duty with the 2 young kids. I'm like, please get me out of this thing. And I got really lucky because I got $20,000, because at that time, if you remember, car lots were empty.
Yeah.
And if you can roll in with a Honda Odyssey, those things will sell in the Bay Area all day long. And so I get 20 grand plus 10,000 in federal and state incentives, and suddenly that $69,000 truck is, back to a $49,000 truck now, 2% interest rate, and I maxed out the loan term and I made it work. And I think I couldn't do that today if I was trying to buy the Lightning, and that was my main thing, with the Cybertruck. If my time came right now to make that switch, I couldn't get enough trade-in for my Lightning, and then at the 7% interest rate, I couldn't make that math work. And I think that more is going to be the case for a lot of people that were so excited, just like I was. And then you go through the mental gymnastics of, how can I make this work? And it's so much harder and deflating. And then some people will get past the stages of grief, and then they'll figure it out, right? They'll talk to their spouse. They'll look at what other things they're spending money on, and then they'll pull the trigger if they can. And as many as people pull the trigger, they'll be able to produce them, or I guess the other way around, as many as they produce, they'll get people to pull that trigger, and it's
as,
still
as we've seen. I mean, I think that the lower price is obviously the highest demand, and that's something that I think Tesla obviously is gonna have a huge request for the lower models, which is why you're already seeing the single motor not even dropping until 2025.
Yeah, they gave themselves enough lead time to be able to do everything in the year of 2024
and they
before
can
they even
ramp
have
production,
to.
and they
Right.
can ramp production enough to where that those things make more financial sense at that time. But who knows what that's going to look like in a year? But for all the bells and whistles that they have to offer, I think that it's something that affordability does play a huge factor into it. But if you look at the competition in both ICE and EV trucks, I mean, everything is expensive.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. I mean, I don't know what the exact cost is, but I mean, your Ford F-150 is the most popular selling truck. But if you go to buy a gas powered F-150 and try to get anything above a base model, let me tell you, I can pull it up now. But I mean, like last time I checked, my buddy, like I said, but I think I talked about it last week. He bought a hybrid Lariat, which is equivalent to our trim model, paid $5,000 less than what we paid for our EV trucks. So it's not like they're like super overpricing themselves in the market.
Yeah.
If you buy an XLT truck, base, super cab, starts at 40 grand. So I mean, that's with no bells and whistles. That's not even the extended cab. Not four-wheel drive, all the things. Like if you get to the base of what people would actually need, you're looking at a 50,000-60,000 minimum, which is where these EVs are clocking in at, and you get the tax credit that's associated with it as well. So I think it's just the new vehicle market's very tricky. I think one huge thing, which I think we talked about briefly, which we need to have like a whole episode about, but the used EV market isn't there because everything's so new. But if there comes a time where we actually see a good, meaningful use case for the EV market, that hey, my Lightning has 60,000 miles. That's what a lot of people are buying. I mean, I bought used vehicles for years and years and years because that's how you can get an affordable vehicle that's decent. And that's where you'll see things like the Lightnings for resale start to have better values than some of the new vehicles, which for most people, the average consumer might be considered unaffordable. But that's where I don't feel like the EV market, and with the Tesla releases, I don't think that they're outpricing themselves compared to the average price. An XLT four-wheel drive with the 3.3 liter base engine is going to run you $53,000. And this truck is the base model is going to be 60, and with the $7,500 tax credit, it's actually cheaper than the base XLT, and it's going to have way more features. I mean, that's just comparably, I think it matches very well with where the rest of the market's at.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? I mean, people are going to have to do that research, like you just did. People are going to have to look into these things, and there's certain people that just won't. That's just the reality of it. They go for what they go for, and they won't even know that. Like I had a friend of mine went out and bought an Audi, I think it was an A4 or something like that, and what he paid for that, he could have got a used performance because he got a used Audi for the same price. He could have got a used performance Model 3 for that, and it was like, and when I told him that, he was like, "What, really?" Like, you know what I mean? Like in his head, he just thought they were all like 60,000, and that he was just priced out because he didn't look.
I think people still associate Tesla with those early Model S, Model X, 120, 130, and for the Cybertruck to start where it is, it's way less than the S and the X were. And just like those came down, as they scale this, it will come down. And it will get attention, Joe. It'll get attention. It'll get people to finally start to look at some of these things. And maybe they don't buy Cybertruck, but maybe they buy something else because it got their attention. Or maybe they end up in a 3 or a Y, or maybe they end up in a Silverado or a Lightning or something. But it gets them asking questions. It gets them seeing it normalized. You had a great comparison. You compared it to a totally different segment. I don't know if you recall, like what,
Yeah.
tell,
A utility vehicle with the Jeep.
yeah,
So that's what I was trying to explain. Trying to explain to people that yeah, we do all these truck comparisons because it has the truck after cyber, but realistically, it's created its own segment. Like I mean, just like you said, Josh. I mean, you can try and compare it to a regular truck, but then once you start to look at it and realize, okay, well, this one's bullet tough, and this one has like 48-volt architecture to, you know what I mean? It just has all these things in that ground clearance, 17 inches. And
yeah,
you're talking like flat across without any of the you know, things that a regular truck has. Because you can I got a neighbor here and he's a good friend and he has two lifted trucks. And even though he has these great freaking 40 plus inch tires on it, it doesn't really make a difference because the freaking differential still is, you know what I mean? It doesn't clear as much as the freaking tires clear. And so you look at all that and as much as people like to try and downplay it, I mean it's not really meant to be a truck like in all that a truck is, you know what I mean? Like, and that's why I was saying in my post, like I likened it to like a Jeep and I think it was Mark Benton who coined the phrase of a Tesla utility vehicle. So he was like TUV, like in the beginning,
yeah.
like
I
4
like
years
it.
ago. Yeah. So, but as you're looking at it and use cases and everything surrounding it, like it's just its own segment. It's literally
Yeah.
its own vehicle. Like, yeah, because you know what I mean? Because we're here and we're talking about trucks, like we can try and put it in that box, but the more you start to realize what it's offering, how fast it is, and everything else, it's just like it's not really it's it's like its own thing. And I think people will start to realize that, just like they did with Jeep. You know what I mean? Like nobody's looking at the Jeep Wrangler with the bed on it saying like, oh, well, that's compare that to an F-150. Nobody does that.
Yeah, it's its own thing with its own characteristics that are plus
Yeah,
minus. I
exactly.
love that comparison, man. And then you brought up something that I've been on, and I'll be honest, I've been mocked for it a little bit. I'd love to hear you drop the idea of the 48-volt architecture, right? And I am all in on this, man. I am all in on the steer by wire, the
Yep.
48-volt architecture, the use of Ethernet. And I get mocked because someone's like, look, BMW's done it, and these people have done it. And I'm like, but here's the thing, man. Like the EV1 came out before Tesla, right? Like the
Yeah.
Prius came out before Tesla was what it was. Like it's not that this thing has never been done, right? And that Tesla is somehow working some kind of unicorn magic. But for Tesla to do it means that Tesla will execute on it. And you're going to have out there 48 volts and Ethernet and steer by wire. And when it just like that opened the eyes when they did the S and then the X and then the Y and the 3, it opened the eyes for the industry, for the lightning to be born, for all of these
Right.
companies to be on board. I truly, man, and maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm drinking the juice, but I'm telling you, I think that was my biggest takeaway and biggest excitement was I think this can change the industry, not because it's never been done or never been heard of, because I think because of the scale. And then I think, and I'd love as a Tesla insider guy to know what you think about this. I think what they learn from the Cybertruck and building these castings and doing the 48 volts and the steer by wire and the Ethernet will all translate to an eventual lower cost vehicle that they can then massively scale, because the Cybertruck and the F-150 have a limited market worldwide. You can't sell these trucks everywhere. It's not going to be
Right.
like the 3 and the Y, their worldwide performances. But that next iteration, the skipping over of the lower cost vehicle that Josh and I have talked about, right? I feel like this is actually a step to that from what they're going to learn. I think those are transformative things. Like, what do you think about that, man?
So I had the luxury of talking to like all the people, like designers and engineers and the powertrain engineers, and that is the eventual goal. Like they're not going backwards. Every vehicle they make going forward will have 48-volt architecture and will, you know what I mean? Like they're not, Tesla just doesn't do that. There's no need to step backwards into anything. So when you're looking at the Roadster and you're looking at that cheaper vehicle that's going to be made in Texas and in Mexico, like, yeah, it's going to have like all these things, and they're going to have perfected it by that point. I even when you look at the Model Y, the initial one that launched is not the same one that people get today. It's like, you know what I mean? They keep iterating. Like Tesla is never like pencils down. They're always like perfecting and improving until they reach the next thing. And I think that's the beauty of like what you say is this just let them know like this is their test platform for everything they're going forward with, and they're just never going backwards from here. Like it's everything from here is going to be 48 volt, and everything's going to be steer by wire. And the redundancies are insane. They have triple redundancies on the steer by wire, and it's also brake by wire. Not a lot of people have mentioned that, but this is also brake by wire as well. Good. So like, I mean, they're like, I mean, when there's so there was this whole section where when you walk through after the seats and the tires and everything, they had a truck with just put together all the way except for all the wires and everything else was exposed, so you could see like where all the electronics are exposed to, and you just have this freaking Ethernet cables going back, just these white Ethernet cables going back throughout the truck, no huge wiring harness and all those things wrapped and braided and all that. Like that was it. And I was like, this is insane, man. Like
that's the future.
Yeah, it's like
the future, man.
There's a beauty in the simplicity of it. And I think that's something that Tesla as a whole, you know, I think when you see a lot of these other OEMs, they've gone and tried to make their gas vehicles electric, where Tesla has just forged their own path. And even with what they've created, like you said, that they've never stopped working on developing to make this a sustainable future. Like the whole casting is something that's never been done before. The stainless alloy, which has been created and never created from nothing. I mean, it was designed for this vehicle.
Yeah.
I think that they're always looking forward at the future of the industry, and they're going to be eons ahead in their releases because they are constantly working on technology improvements such as these variables that we've discussed that, I mean, that really help them stand apart to be one, simple for design, which, you know, some people are up and down with having one big solid, you know, cast of your body, but at the same time, like the amount of moving pieces and parts and things in that vehicle have been cut down so much. You see a company like Ford saying we're trying to lower our parts, but Tesla's done it. I mean, the amount of components that they have is down so much because they've simplified their game, which just helps with operations.
Ford's number two right now. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, I mean, and that's incredible. Of course, I mean, it's a freaking they're a lifetime away, but Tesla had that. I mean, you know what I mean? It can't be discounted. Like Tesla had that lead for years, and they just kept improving. So I like the fact of where Ford is. I like the fact of where Ford's going. And I think there's a couple of things to note, like what you were saying, Chris, like just knowing that Tesla is looking at this as a learning platform for going forward. You have those things working for it, and you also know that Tesla creates things at scale. Like thinking about that, thinking about this truck, thinking about like the robots and everything else they're doing, like they don't make things like for like one or two people. Like they're not even, the Model S doesn't even beat the Lucid in range, but guess what? They can make 20,000 of them per quarter. You know what I mean? Like, and poor Lucid, you know, I mean, even with over 500 miles of range, they can't sell enough to, you know, to meet demand. And so there you are, people buying 400 mile freaking Model S's and stuff in great droves. You know what I mean? Like it's just,
affordability. I think affordability plays a huge factor in that too.
well, not even like, remember in the beginning, like when the Plaid came out, that was 160 grand. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, now it's 89, but like, that was like way up there, and people were still buying them. They were.
How long ago? How long was that? What was the time frame, right? To go from 160 to not quite half, but right?
About a year.
Like that's just great. I know. I remember people freaking
Not
out.
even like a full year. I think, yeah, well, yeah, about a year, I would say. Yeah.
I think some people had bought theirs in the recent past, and then this price drop happens, and it was like
Oh
Armageddon.
yeah.
And people were just like, "What happened to my value?" Like your car is still just as valuable to you, unless you were trying to flip it or sell it. But
Right.
yeah, suddenly a lot of people could get into S's and X's that couldn't before.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like all the people in January were probably very upset by now how prices worked out. But you got to take that same thought process when you're looking at scale for the Cybertruck. So yeah, it's coming out at this price. But guess what? A year from now, even in 2025, but at the end of 2024, like they're not going to be at this price. As soon as the other one, you know what I mean? As soon as like they start able to make the single motor and all that type of stuff, and then those people jump from this to that and get the extended, you know what I mean? Like that's a good 96,000 before the EV tax credit that you have like a pretty solid range of a vehicle that you're not going to be able to get at that price for anything else. And so I think like a lot of people are just going to just gravitate towards that, and the prices are going to come down. I mean, that's just Tesla's MO. Like they scale and they bring the price down. They scale more and they keep bringing the price down because Tesla has always been about making vehicles for everybody, not making, you know, I mean, niche vehicles for the niche market. And like, yeah, they could easily like probably sell the Roadster like the Rimac Navara, you know what I mean? Like $2 million because they only made 150 of them. But Tesla's not going to do that. Tesla's selling them for $250 because they're freaking going to be making thousands of them.
Yeah.
And I think that scale is where things work out for Tesla, because I mean, yeah, we look at the company and we look at the sales, you know what I mean, because we see the dealerships and all that type of stuff. But this goes back to like supply chain and like who's getting the best deals because they can meet that demand of what's going forward. Like, you know, I mean, it sucks to say, but like GM goes into a talk and they're like, well, how many trucks are you planning to sell of this truck? You know what I mean? GM's going to be honest and tell them, we plan on doing like 100,000, and that's like a wish number because they're probably going to do like 30 to 40. But Tesla comes in, it's like, well, how many are you planning to sell? Oh, we're going to do 250,000, which is also a lowball number because they know Tesla's going to freaking try to overdo that. So, I mean, who's going to get those contracts? You know what I mean? Well, who's going to get the contracts first? Who's going to get the best deal? And I think like that's where these things come into play for Tesla and how they're able to have these prices be so on par with like what Josh was saying. Like this just meets, you know what I mean, everybody else's price range, you know what I mean, without like doing anything.
At the start.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, for everybody's starting price range, and it's not even it's not overdoing it. It's not like it's not like what we were saying. It's not like a hammer over the head where you're getting like a 400+ mile truck at 70. You know what I mean? 80,000. That's not what you're getting. You're getting like 340 miles, 20 to 30 miles around what everybody else is doing. But it's like, hey, like, you know what I mean? You're looking at it and you're like, well, do I want my truck to be bullet tough or do I want it to look cool? And I mean, these things are gonna subjective. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, some people like the look of the freaking Cybertruck. Some people love the look of the F-150. You know what I mean? Like it's all subjective. But I think that supply chain and how many they're buying, and these are all things that play into like Tesla's MO and scale, man. The scale is where it's at for Tesla. They're just outselling everybody. And this is a crazy thing to bring it back to Ford is this is exactly what happened with the Model T, right? Like there was no gas stations. Like people used to talk about that. I posted ads of, you know what I mean, from before when people would talk about my horse won't let me down and all this type of stuff. And because, you know, you could just ride a horse with your buggy and take it everywhere. But the gas stations weren't ubiquitous. But guess what? Ford was selling a freaking Model T so much at scale and bringing the price down compared to everybody else. They were just cranking them out. It's like they flooded the market. And it's like, well, hell, we got to make gas stations because everybody has these freaking cars, you know what I mean? And we got to do this and we got to do that. And then next thing you know, like Ford's freaking crushing it for years and years because they just were scaling. And I think Jim Farley has that same type of mentality. He realizes that, you know, I mean, this is grassroots. Like this is like a new frontier. And I think this is like for him what that era was back then. You know what I mean? Like this is like we're all first. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Tesla's got a lead, but he can definitely beat everybody else. You know what I mean? Like he just has to outrun the bear. You know what I mean?
I think that's important, man. And when you talk about Tesla's MO, what I really love about Tesla's MO is two things. They're almost stupidly transparent, right? Like they're just like Ford right now is working on the T3 and a factory in Tennessee, and good luck trying to find out what their vision and aspirations are for it. We know it's going to be this amazing thing because they've told us it's this amazing thing. Like, tell me what makes it amazing. That's hush hush, right? Elon just gets out there and tells you his aspirations. And if he falls short of it, it's still amazing. It's just short of those maybe outlandish, people joke about 2 weeks or people joke about, all these different things. But what he produces off of that is amazing. But then he really backs it up by being so transparent, whether it's releasing the recent Roadster specs and just putting them all out there and saying, all right, you guys, here they are, or whether it's opening up NACS or just that whole mission and vision and I think it's important. I think it is important to do it. And I think we all are in this because if we don't get this right from Ford and from Rivian and Lucid and Tesla leading the way with this, BYD is going to roll up to us with what they're doing from China. They are going to decimate what we do. And so this stuff inspires, I think, the automotive industry. I think it wakens up the outlandish in the American spirit to see something like Cybertruck roll out. And this is where if T3 rolls out from Ford in 2025 and we don't see some of this, whether it's Ethernet or drive steer by wire or 48 volt or architecture or these things, right? These software defined vehicles, more along maybe they don't hit all of them in shot number one there from that. But if I don't see some of it, I would then be disappointed. I think they are proving what the future looks like in this way. And I think they're very transparent about it. And that to some people's mind, they criticize this and they mock it. But at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want Elon to get up there on the back of a Cybertruck and speak in the awkward way sometimes Elon does, because to me, it's genuine, it's endearing. And is it sometimes a little outlandish and a little over the top and a little, sure, maybe, but man, those engineers believe it and they do it out of passion. And those people, I think, are going to produce something that's better than would have been possible if he didn't put that aspiration out there to start.
Yeah, I think that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think that you hit on something that's very true. Well, two things, right? Like Tesla did actually send out a paper to every single OEM about the how to make a 48 volt vehicle. So yeah, they're not keeping any secrets. They're not trying to. They really want the industry to move forward. And I mean, and that's just going to create better prices for everybody. But the second part of that is, holy cow, man, like everything that's going to come out after this with the T3 and everything else, like what you're saying, like, yeah, they don't have to copy it, but man, as long as they hit on some of those, if they're able to find a way to make the T3 like have even half of the things, like with the bullet toughness and stuff like that. I mean, built for tough is going to mean something a lot differently when the T3 comes out. I guarantee you. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna start to hit those type of things, and it's gonna start to mean something different. And like you say, if it doesn't, it's going to be really disappointing. Like, why would you not do that? You know what I mean? It doesn't have to look this shape, but you could definitely like add in some type of armor panels or whatever and do what you can do. But the amount of things this is going to change for just the industry, like you said, going forward, like, holy cow, man, 5 years from now, can't wait to see what vehicles are going to come out. And I'm actually one of those type of people who studies everything and looks at everything. And I will tell you that there are some amazing vehicles in China. Like if you
Yes.
ever have a chance to look up the Hi-Fi, like that vehicle's incredible. I mean, it craps on a lot of things over here, like including like a Model X and all these type of things, and even like Faraday Futures. Like the Hi-Fi is a crazy looking vehicle. I mean, with doors that do it's insane. But China has all these things happening, and once they're able to come over here and invade, like how Japan did in the 80s, like people aren't realizing that. People aren't realizing that, like, we have people don't really respect Elon for whatever reason. And I think it's just like Toyota with the Prius back in the day. It's like, oh, you drive a Prius? Oh, you think, you know what I mean? Like, it becomes like this thing that people just want to be against. And Tesla's becoming like that. But it's not going to make a difference because it's American. It's American ingenuity. Here we're manufacturing here in America, and these things are hitting, and we are crushing the world right now in everything that we're doing. And that invasion is happening. Like
So everybody else better catch up and get on board.
dude,
Yeah.
GM, like everybody has got to catch up. They are not, China's not resting on their laurels. Like
Yep.
people don't realize that there is a quote unquote an arms race for vehicles, and they don't realize it, but it's happening. The EV market is just like the Wild Wild West, like back in the day with Henry Ford. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is like the beginning stages of everything. And yeah, Tesla's been in it for 10 plus years, but that's still new. You've got 100 years of freaking ingenuity on freaking manufacturing for ICE vehicles. Like, and we're just at the beginning stages. We're a baby right now. If you're looking at the next 90 years that we got to improve upon, like EVs, it's just wild. One of the
Yeah, and
go
if
ahead.
you look at the rankings of globally the most popular vehicles selling, Tesla does have the global numbers. January through August, there's about 1 million Ys and threes that were sold. But if you look at the next two, is BYD. Then there's a GAC, which is a Chinese unit. There's a mini EV Chinese unit, a GAC, Aeon. There's an Aeon S and a Y that's coming out of China, and all of the subsequent ones are Chinese units. And
Oh yeah.
I think that Tesla has gone through and established themselves as market leaders, not only nationally, but globally, with all of the investments that they've done into this infrastructure. But I think that you're seeing the OEMs that are going to be the pioneering front of the future, like Tesla and like Ford. I mean, Ford's reporting losses, but it's because they're investing $5 billion into building Blue Oval City, into developing the future of the electrified vehicle. And I
Yeah.
think that that's something that Tesla's done with their mega factories and the casting and research and all of this stuff that they've done. But I think the Cybertruck is the flag in the field saying, hey, look what we did, and look what we can do.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not everything that everybody hoped and dreamed, but they took something from an idea and made it a reality with all of this technology that hasn't been well executed in the EV industry specifically, but in the car industry as a whole. And they're saying, look, we can make a vehicle out of stainless steel that has equivalent range that's bulletproof and that can go 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds and do something about it. And so, I mean, I think that they've really established themselves with their investments, and it will lead to them, like you're saying, 5 years from now, the future of the automotive industry is going to look completely different because of the OEMs like Ford and Tesla that have done all of this investing. And the vehicle, we talked about it, I think 2 weeks ago on the podcast, but there was, Toyota is trying to sell shares in this to get some funding to improve their game. They're behind the eight ball. These other
Yeah.
companies have been working on it for years, and I think that that's where you're going to see the heaviest and the most significant actual future releases of these vehicles, where a lot of these vehicle manufacturers like the Hummer came out. I think I read a stat, and I might be wrong on this, but I think that they've sold like 1,000 this year of the Hummer EVs, like nationwide, and it's a totally different dynamic of looking at who your buyer is, making a product that fits for them, doing it in mass scale, and having the investments in the right space to actually make yourself an industry leader for the years to come.
And if I can jump on like a little bit of a side rant on, like you were talking about the profitability side of it, like we know that Lucid and Rivian lose money and Ford loses money, but in Ford's case, it's because they made the conscious decision to break off Model E separate from the rest of the company so that they can report it out, because they easily could have buried or hidden that or made it more difficult to, but they're very transparent, which again is something I love. I love that transparency. And I do think that that's not a problem for me, because it took Tesla 10 or 11 years to make money. And it was when they scaled the Model 3, the scale is everything. And so I do think that this stuff, China is coming, and they've got this incredible juggernaut out there of products. And I think what Tesla is doing with scale is required and necessary. And I think Ford is, even though they're losing money right now, the company still made over $1 billion last quarter and $5 billion this year. And it's a profitable company. It's just that it's burning ICE profits instead of investor startup capital. But they're, Lucid and Rivian are just obviously doing it because there's no other product to sell except their EV. So it makes it obvious that Lucid's losing 400,000 per vehicle, but that's because, again, they need to scale. And I hope Gravity is the thing that does it. We need that, man. I think Tesla's already figured it out and given us that roadmap. I think for Ford, they've got such a diverse portfolio of products that things like the T3 and what we were just talking about with smaller trucks like, the Maverick or the Ranger, those are the big sellers outside of America. We're so American centric that we lose track of how much is out there. And those big numbers we're seeing out of China, it's not like they're all in China. They're in South America. They're in Asia. They're in Mexico, and Ford needs to get that market, because the Ranger is the big selling truck, not the F-150. If you go to Asia, if you go to South Africa, if you go to those places, the F-150 isn't at all the vehicle. It's too big. And so I think these things are important, because I do think like T3 will have a Maverick Ranger-esque kind of thing that could be sold worldwide. I do think Tesla will learn from this and start making other vehicles that are worldwide vehicles off this architecture. And I think that's what makes us competitive with China. I think it's the only way we get it done. And I hope other people recognize that. So I'm not worried about them losing money, because that's how Amazon works. That's how Tesla works. You lose the money until you scale. And the fact that, and in fact, I'm almost happy that Ford's doing it off ICE profits. What better way to do it than to take that money from ICE and put that into the future?
And it's not really losses. It's reinvesting, which, every investment comes with an ROI, and, it's time laid out. But I mean, if you want to develop a train network to get something from Tennessee to California, you're going to have to invest billions of dollars to get a rail run to get there. But once it's there, it's there. And then all of a sudden, now you have the goods that you make back your money. But a $5 billion investment isn't just a light chunk of change to cough up. And yes, you are absorbing other profits to do that, but it's going to lead to a stronger future for the business, because they're developing infrastructure and bulletproofing, not to tie that one in too well, but bulletproofing themselves in the future, because they're making those investments now. It's not loss. They are, quote, losing per vehicle, but it's all investments that they will get back in the long run, especially while all of these incentives and things are currently, being tossed around through the federal government.
I compare it to solar, man. I lost money when I bought my solar panels
initially,
right? Compared to what I would have spent for those first couple of years. But when I got to year 7, I paid myself back, and now everything's free. So you're losing, then I'm free. And that's what Tesla does, man. That's what Ford is doing. You lose, and then you're so hand over fist profit margin. You can just do anything. You're so cash flow positive. But people forget those peanut butter and jelly ramen noodle early days, right? When they were leveraging everything they could to get to where they are today, and just how hard that was. And so, yeah, now when I'm working off free power, they forgot about the 7 years it took me to pay that off. I had to make that investment. So
it's everybody that's wagging their fingers saying, "Oh, look at the EVs losing money," and it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not the one to say that I think EVs are going to save the world, but it's a very functional vehicle. And the average person is just so ignorant, in my opinion. I was mostly ignorant when I stepped into the EV space, but it's like not everybody has the same thoughts about it, but a lot of it's just ignorance. The lack of understanding of the practicality, the use case, the money savings. And like I said, there's a ton of pros and cons that are associated that every person needs to have their own evaluation of. We've discussed this before. If my need is to haul stuff on a trailer from Tennessee to Colorado and back all the time, an EV truck is not my game right now. I mean, I need that diesel truck, but me and my job, I would drive 5 to 100 miles a week around town. I'm saving $500-600 a month on gas for me, and that was just for me buying an EV truck, not even a Tesla or anything else. I wanted a truck. I bought an EV truck, and I have not experienced any loss of happiness off of having that. If anything, it's been a huge asset to me, and that's something that I think the average person just doesn't understand. I see so many people sharing all of this propaganda, if you will, around the negatives, and look at all this money that this company's losing, and it's just lack of understanding of people not understanding that these people that own multi-billion-dollar companies know what they're doing. They're not just being stupid for the cause of an agenda. They're actually promoting their business, pushing it forward with meaningful investments for something that will come on the scene. And whether these individuals like it or not, give it 5 years, and we're going to see a large ramp up in EV sales and meaningful, production out of these OEMs that have actually invested.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, because once you start to do any type of research, you realize that with the regularly scheduled maintenance costs, even you don't have to save the freaking environment. It's not even about that. But once you realize what you're saving on fuel, what you're saving on maintenance, most of these vehicles are so much faster, even if you're not a speed person. Like, they're just, electric is just better on so many more metrics than gas, that it's just like like, you're just making a foolish decision to like just go with gas just for the sake of going with gas. There's always going to be enthusiasts.
I'm from a part of the country where a lot more people share that sentiment.
Yeah.
In California, it's a lot easier to have that discussion with people. But that's one of the reasons that I started the podcast in the first place, was like, hey, there's nobody really having a meaningful, like, realistic discussion around the pros and the cons of this industry. And yes, there are several pluses associated with owning an EV when it comes to environmental and things like that. But if you look at it just from a practical use case, it makes more sense for me in my life. I'm saving, like I said, the EV. I looked at the gas truck and the EV truck. I wanted one. I wanted a Raptor so bad for years. Thought it was the baddest looking truck on the road. With how much I drove, I would never.
It is a great looking truck.
I would never spend $80,000 on a truck that I got 12 miles to the gallon on, because then my gas bill of $600 a month would go to $1,000 a month, because it was so bad on gas. And then the Lightning came out, and I was like, because I was going to pay off my 18 F-150 gas that I had, and I was going to buy a Tesla or a hybrid or something that was good on fuel because of how much I drove. But then when it came down to the actual realization of, okay, the F-150 Lightning rolled across the stage. I had evaluated the Rivian, but like I said, size was a concern. The F-150 Lightning rolled out, and I said, yes, that is what I want. Early reservation holder, got it, and it has been exactly the perfect fit for what I needed. And I get all the looks, all the questions, all the comments from people. Oh, I'll see you on the side of the road plugged up. I'm like, just one of those things that, I have the upper hand. You and your ignorance can stay where you're at and pay your high gas bills and be relying on, fuel costs. Me, I plug up at my house and I'm a happy little bird leaving my house every day with a full tank of gas. So, yeah.
Okay, so speaking on leaving your house, what do you think about the power share the Cybertruck has?
Can't believe
That's
we
pretty
didn't
cool.
yet. Yeah.
It has, I mean, the Lightning has 220
Right.
volt, but it's not as juicy as what the Tesla provides. So, I mean, I definitely think that that's a very cool, ready to go, it's locked and loaded, ready to go. So,
Yeah, and I think that's just another one of those little things that they just looked at and just like, oh, we can probably beat that 11 kilowatts, or you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
they looked at the numbers. Clearly, they looked at the numbers. But I think like this is going to be inevitable. I mean, like Hyundai has it, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's just going to become like an everyday thing that most people are just going to be able to share that battery, because you buy a power wall for your house. It's like, what was like 7 to 13 kilowatts. You know what I mean? Like now you have 123 kilowatt hour pack. Like, you know what I mean? It just makes way more sense to make.
And we've had the
battery
discussions on the podcast with vehicle to home and vehicle to
Right.
vehicle. That whole grid setup is an untapped thing that nobody's talking about. That virtual power grids, where if you have 5,000 EVs in a town, all plugged up to where they're connected through the power company and the right systems, that in a power outage you flip a switch and all of the vehicles now are power in your town for the hour that it takes, or the neighborhood. I mean, there's this. It's like you see all these companies with these large, massive battery farms. It's like you have that with EVs. If you have these people like controllers on your water heater to turn it off in high power demand, you can use the battery as with consent in high power times. You have this huge, valuable use case for EVs with storage solutions to provide a resource to the community, rather than just being what people would consider to be a detriment. So,
Joe, you spoke to my heart on this one, man. I can't even believe I didn't talk about this earlier. That vehicle to load, vehicle to grid, another step that I don't know that people are appreciating just what Tesla did here. Because there's a 50 amp plug back there. That's awesome. I can tell you I've got a 30 and I've never exceeded 30. So the fact that that's 50, that doesn't do much for me in terms of value, right? But when I was looking at the trucks and I wanted the Cybertruck and I got the Lightning, I didn't even consider the Rivian, because the Rivian doesn't have exportable power. Maybe one day with over the air it will, but at the time it certainly didn't. And being a big fluffy guy the size too, but that exportable power is huge. And what Tesla did is amazing, because I have a power wall. It's 13 and a half kilowatts. And it was anywhere from $10,000 to $13,000, depending on if it came with solar or not and all the other things. And I can only get one. And in California, back in the day with the rolling blackouts and all the alerts and the crazy stuff that was going on with PG&E out here, I was running off a propane generator during outages. And so to me, like the idea of having a battery backup was vital, and I could only afford the one power wall, but that truck is like 7 power walls. And what Tesla did that people aren't appreciating, though, is that if I wanted to take and plug my Lightning in using the home integration system that they developed with Sunrun, one, I could not incorporate it in with my existing solar, because I'm running off microinverters, and that requires a standalone string inverter. But even if you had a Tesla system with a string inverter, Sunrun will not incorporate it together. They won't touch another person's system. So you had parallel systems going. Those systems are anywhere from, again, like $8,000 to $13,000 to purchase on their own. Tesla, they're telling you, look, all you have to have is the gateway, and the gateway is like, I don't know, $1,200, and the universal wall connector. And so like my current wall, I also have a Tesla wall connector, but that one won't support it. It would need a universal wall connector, and I already have the gateway. All that they're doing, what they're doing that's different is they're using the onboard inverter that we've already got for the Lightning and for what'll be the Cybertruck. And what Rivian will have with the Gravity that has that exportable AC power. It's using the AC. and it's using the wall connector and the gateway to control the switching on and off and protecting the grid and exporting it. That is such a low cost, elegant solution. And all it's going to take is Tesla. It's a no brainer. It's a flip of a software switch. But this is another little cool benefit. One, it's simplified. It's 1/10 of the cost. And this is another area that they can license out to some of these OEMs so that we don't end up with the whole CHAdeMO, CCS, NACS debate again. If they can make this a standard and get everybody on board, I'm telling you, the first opportunity I get, I'm going to ask this question to Ford. Like, because I've got the inverter in the truck, but unless they work with Tesla the way they're working with Tesla on NACS, I won't be able to take advantage of the plugging in a universal wall charger. And that universal wall charger, my sister just bought 2 of them for their place because they've got an X and they have a plug-in hybrid and they use the 2 of them. And it's like $600 for the universal wall charger. And the Pro Station that the Ford uses, the Ford Station Pro, that thing is like $1,600, I think. And that's on, and then you've got the whole home integration system. I don't think that's being talked about enough. If they can get the OEMs on board with supporting that standard, where you can just get a universal wall connector and a gateway, that is huge.
Yeah, I think these are like the chess moves that Tesla likes to play, right? Like to where you're looking at one hand and you don't realize that, well, holy cow, that actually makes sense that they've been doing that for a while. I think this is one of those type of things that I think Elon was kind of forced into this thanks to Ford and on this one part and also part and partial to Lucid as well, because Elon always had the belief that you don't need, you know what I mean, a vehicle to load or vehicle to home because you've got power walls. You got the ability to buy power walls. And it's like, well, not everybody is buying power walls, man. You know what I mean? Like, but the people who are buying Teslas would like the opportunity to take their Tesla and use that battery to freaking, you know what I mean, do whatever. So, I mean, he ended up being kind of forced into this play because they have an existing business. Now, I think in his mind, he thought he would cannibalize it, but I mean, they work hand in hand and they're different use cases for sure. And people will buy what they want. Like I know people that have power walls that don't even have Teslas. You know what I mean? It's just the facts. So I think I think that is pretty awesome. And I think it's really cool that you have the Cybertruck being able to do that. And I mean, and having that 50 amp, I mean, you're talking about power tools and all kinds of all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's heavy duty power.
Yeah, that's heavy duty power, exactly. So yeah. I think they looked at everything and thought, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they didn't put any of the power ports up front. You know what I mean? So it's just all
they
that.
Would have done that. I love having that power in the front.
Yeah.
I think that was a small miss on their part, but okay, can't be perfect.
Yeah. I think they hit on so many other things. It was just like, I think they were looking at, when you look at the wiring diagram, I think they were just realizing that they didn't want to have to run any more wire. You know what I mean? Like they were really trying to limit the use case of wires and the copper and stuff like that. So that would have just been more to run from wherever, from the back to the front. You know what I mean? It's like they didn't want to have to do that. So I can see that, but I guarantee you there's going to be aftermarket things and people are going to be making things and modifying their frunks and doing whatever they want.
I've seen it with the X and the Y. I've been out to some of these Cars and Coffees that they'll have different modified things that folks have done. And right there in the frunk, they've powered some things. So what's going to happen with the Cybertruck.
Brandon Tesla Flex made a video and the whole outside of the Cybertruck is magnetic. So there's so many.
Is it?
Yeah.
The outside is magnetic. I thought stainless wasn't magnetic. There's something about this alloy that is?
They made their own alloy. Like they modified this alloy specifically for this
Cybertruck,
use case. Yeah, for Cybertruck. So it's different. Yeah, it's different, and it being magnetic just proves that. Yeah, he had his mag back case. It was just like, holy cow! It's like plop, plop, plop. Yeah.
I love those little
The whole
nuggets,
car.
right?
The whole car is
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
wireless charging. You can just stick your phone on the outside of your
Yeah.
car and it charges your phone. You know,
Can you imagine that?
So
That would be insane. That would
well,
let
be
me.
next week we want to actually I want to dive into more of the details of the actual truck and what the features are and some of the comments around that. We'll kind of touch base on that.
Oh yeah.
We're running a little bit long, so we'll
No,
wrap it
that's
up for
fine.
today.
Yeah, I
If
can
you're
I can come
free,
back next
if
week.
you're free, we'll have you back next week, and we will have the same discussion. But
Yeah.
really, really, really enjoyed your time today, and it's been a good conversation. I think it's a lot of moving parts. Everybody has a different opinion, but there's
Yeah.
obviously a huge event that happened that people are underappreciating that will redefine the industry moving forward. And I think that once we start seeing these trucks on the road, we're going to understand a little bit more about, the gravity of what actually was released rather than just the hypotheticals now coming to reality. So
Yeah.
really cool to see some of this infrastructure come online and a lot more to discuss. Like I said, Cybertruck month is going to be December. So we'll be talking about Cybertruck all month long. So
Before we close out, I'd love to hear just one thing from Joe, because everything we've been saying, right? You've been there, you've seen it. Where are you at with your S right now? And are you going to pull the trigger on the Cybertruck? Is there something in between? Like, what's your plan? Like, what are you thinking?
So I sold my S like 2 months ago for the Cybertruck.
Yeah,
I've been I'm right now driving a Gen 1 Prius that I borrowed from one of my friends. And so I'm using gas.
Oh no.
But my wife has a Y, so I use that. I drive that most of the time. But yeah,
So
no, I'm getting all-wheel drive. I don't My thing has always been about range. So I don't really have speed doesn't really matter. And the long range freaking Y we have is plenty fast enough, man,
yeah.
with the all-wheel drive. And I realized the same thing with the Model S, even the long range over the Plaid. Like it's plenty quick. You're good.
Where's your
0 to
range at?
60 in 4 seconds. As an owner of a truck that does 0 to 60 in 4 seconds,
Plenty.
it's plenty fun enough to get you the butterflies that you want to feel. 2.6
Exactly.
is in fact quicker, but 4 seconds is more than enough to get you and your friends impressed. So
Right.
Where do you feel like you're at, Joe? Are you in that 112 group, or like mine's in
Yeah,
113?
yeah. No,
You're in
I'm
the
112. Yeah. I
awesome.
did it right away. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a 112 number. I'm just waiting. My birthday's in January, so I'm really hoping that I am able
Birthday
to.
gift from Elon.
Yeah, that would be freaking sweet. So
we'll
I don't,
have to put in the good word for you.
man.
Seems like
Trust
you
me,
would have the better word to put in for yourself than us, but yeah.
you would think like man, that'd be cool if I knew something. But man, nah. I'm like everybody else. I mean, we're enthusiasts for the brand, and we do these things for our members and for the community mostly. I mean, as Chris knows, but
Yeah, you're right.
yeah, I mean, we're an official partner of Tesla with the Owners Club program, but I mean, it's not like they reach out to us for like a different things unless they have something that they want to promote. I think solar was the last thing we partnered with them on. Most of my contacts is just with the local service centers and things that they want to do around trying to move units and things like that. So we're really big in the community for that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
You're great. You're one of the best.
Thanks, man.
Well, we will have you back on. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. This will be the longest episode of the podcast in all of the episodes. So, welcome to the high minute club. But I mean, there's so much to talk about, so much more to talk about. I hate to cut it short,
Right.
but we will continue this conversation maybe next week if you can join it. So,
I'll be here.
Great chat.
thank
guys.
you everyone for joining in. Tune in next week for more information.
Peace.